in a dusty auction yard, where silence was the loudest sound. A 12-year-old boy named Micah stood on display, surrounded by a crowd that viewed him with cold indifference. His body was frail, his face haunted, and his silence spoke volumes. The town had already discarded him. He was nothing more than a commodity, priced at $1, no different than a stray animal. A man named Cal Dunn, a cattleman with a chip on his shoulder, was convinced Micah was trouble. He came to the ranch, his words dripping with malice, but Clara's response was unwavering. "He stays," she said, and that was the end of it. Clara had made her decision, and no one would take Micah away from her. And then came the fire, the one that nearly took everything. Micah risked his life to save the ranch, his hands blistering as he fought the flames alongside Clara. It was in that moment that Clara knew something had changed in him. He wasn't the same boy who had stood in that auction yard. He had become someone who could fight, who could protect, who could love. The fire was the test, and together they passed it. But even in the aftermath, there were those in town who wouldn't let go of their hate. The sheriff returned, bringing with him the weight of the law. He came to remove Micah, but Clara refused to bend. "The law will have to come through me," she said, and it was a promise. The decision was made. The town would vote on whether Micah should stay or go. Clara didn't care for the vote, but the sheriff told her it was inevitable. But Clara knew what was truly inevitable: the fight to protect her land, her home, and the boy who had become her family. When the vote passed against them, the sheriff came to enforce the law, but Clara didn't flinch. Micah, standing beside her, wasn't afraid either. The decision had been made. Micah wasn't going anywhere. The auctioneer's words fell flat as no one moved to claim him, their eyes scanning past him, treating him like air. The marshal offered them dignity, a chance to plead their case in front of the circuit judge. But Clara wasn't interested in negotiating. Micah wasn't a problem to be fixed. He was a boy who had been broken, but not beyond repair. He had a place in this world, with Clara. And in that moment, as the marshal left, leaving behind only a paper with a 60-day delay, Clara and Micah knew that they had won something far more important than the town's approval. They had found something that no one could take away, each other, and together they would face whatever came next, standing side by side, no longer broken but whole. The prairie around them stretched on, vast and endless, but for the first time it felt like a place where they could finally belong. Micah hadn't spoken since the night his world shattered. Since he watched his mother's body discarded by the side of the road, and he was left to fend for himself in an unforgiving world. He hadn't said a word since, not even when he was punished for things he didn't understand. But Clara Duvall, a woman who had long been a figure of isolation, saw something in him. She wasn't like the rest of the town. Her husband had died 5 years ago, and since then she had run her ranch alone. The town whispered about her, about how odd she was, how distant. But Clara was no stranger to loneliness, to grief, to the quiet kind of survival that left no room for judgment. She stepped forward at the auction, breaking the silence with a gesture that made the crowd gasp. She didn't see a broken boy. She saw a soul in need of something more than the world had offered him, a place where he could just be. Clara didn't speak a word when she kissed his forehead, a kiss that wasn't of affection but recognition, a sign that she understood his pain. The crowd, stunned, didn't know what to make of her. They murmured, but Clara didn't care. She paid for him, not as an object, but as a person, and led him away from the auction yard. The ranch was a far cry from the life Micah had known. There were no whips, no cold stone floors, no cries of punishment. Clara didn't need to speak to communicate. Her actions spoke louder than words ever could. Micah ate his first real meal in days, hesitating, unsure of how to act when faced with such simple kindness. But as the days passed, the ranch began to feel like something more than just a house. It was a home. Clara never forced him to speak, but she showed him what it meant to live with integrity, with strength, with grace. She didn't coddle him, but she treated him with respect, with dignity, the way he'd never been treated before. She gave him space to heal, to learn, without demanding anything in return. Slowly, Micah learned to trust. He learned the rhythm of the land, how to care for the animals, how to feed the horses, how to stand still and listen to the quiet of the night. Clara was steady. Every day, she worked with a patience that Micah had never seen before. She never asked for help, but she never stopped him either. And as he watched her, he began to feel something stirring in him. Something that had been dormant for far too long. He began to want to help her, to give something back, to show her that he wasn't just a broken boy. But the town never stopped watching. Rumors spread like wildfire. The sheriff visited, his presence as cold as the wind that swept through the ranch. He didn't trust the boy, didn't trust Clara, but she never faltered. When the whispers grew louder, Clara remained silent, choosing to let her actions speak for her. She didn't care what the town thought, because, for the first time, Micah wasn't just existing, he was living. But not everyone could let go of their fear and suspicion. As the marshal arrived, Clara and Micah stood on the porch, waiting. They had prepared for this moment.